A millionaire CEO stepped out of his car, polished shoes on the pavement, certain the world respected his success. But just a few steps away, a little girl looked him straight in the eye and told him to shut up. At first, he was stunned. How could a child speak to him like that? But within seconds, he realized her words carried a truth far heavier than his money or power. What could possibly force a child to silence a man who had everything? The answer will leave you questioning what. Marcus was used to being noticed. As a self-made CEO, his life looked polished from the outside. Meetings in glass towers, expensive suits, cars that turned heads. People shook his hand with respect, though sometimes it felt more like fear. He had grown up hearing he'd never make it, yet here he was, proof that hard work could rewrite a story. But success hadn't erased the quiet tension he carried. The way some still looked at him too long. The unspoken weight that money couldn't wash away. On this day, he stepped out of his car in a quiet neighborhood, expecting nothing unusual. Just another afternoon. Another deal waiting. What he didn't know was that a little girl was about to strip away every layer of control he thought he had, forcing him to face something no fortune could shield him from. The moment should have been ordinary. Marcus had just locked his car door, adjusting his cufflinks, ready to walk into a community center where he'd been invited as a guest speaker. But across the lot, he noticed stares. A group of parents whispering, pulling their children closer. Their eyes didn't see a leader, a role model, or a man who had built his way to the top. They only saw the color of his skin. He felt it, like a sudden chill. The kind of silence that screams louder than words. Still he kept walking. Years of experience had taught him to ignore it, to pretend it didn't exist. But that silence followed him inside. When he entered the hall, a little girl, barely 8 years old, was sitting with her mother. As Marcus began speaking, her voice cut through the room like a knife. "Shut up." The crowd gasped. At first, Marcus thought it was childish mischief, but her face wasn't playful. It was serious. Determined. She wasn't disrespecting him for fun. She was silencing him, almost as if repeating something she'd been told to say. And then it clicked. Behind her, the mother's uneasy glance revealed everything. The whispers, the looks, the message passed down to a child before she could even understand the world. Don't trust him. Don't listen to him. People like him don't belong here. Marcus's chest tightened. He had faced boardrooms full of doubters, banks that refused his loans, men who smiled while shutting doors in his face. But this was different. This was innocence poisoned. A child carrying prejudice she hadn't even chosen. The room shifted. Some adults nodded at the girl, as if approving her outburst. Others sat frozen, pretending nothing happened. And Marcus stood there, his words trapped, caught between anger and heartbreak. If he lashed out, he'd confirm their bias. If he stayed silent, he'd accept their cruelty. The pause stretched. The weight grew heavier. His eyes met the girl's again, and for a second, he saw confusion flicker. As if a small part of her wondered why she had been told to silence him. And that hesitation gave Marcus a choice. Should he continue, pretending her words meant nothing? Or should he risk everything, his reputation, his composure, to confront the truth no one in the room wanted to face? The air was thick. Every second felt like a storm waiting to break. He had been told his whole life to stay calm, stay polite, stay safe. But at that moment, the question wasn't about safety. It was about dignity. And as his hand tightened around the microphone, he realized, this was no longer about his success, his wealth, or his image. It was about a child being taught to hate before she had the chance to know love. What he chose to say next would either shatter the silence, or let it grow even stronger. Respect really means, and who truly deserves to be heard. The room was frozen, every eye locked on Marcus. His hand gripped the microphone so tightly his knuckles whitened, but his voice stayed steady. He could feel his pulse pounding in his ears, louder than the whispers. The little girl's words still hung in the air. Raw, unshakable. He thought about the years he spent clawing his way up, proving himself again and again to people who never wanted to see him win. But this moment hit harder than all of it. Because success hadn't protected him. His money, his title, his accomplishments. None of it could shield him from being reduced to a single word, a single judgment passed on to a child. And then, as if the silence wasn't enough, a man in the crowd muttered just loud enough to be heard. She's right. He shouldn't even be speaking here. The words cut deeper than any boardroom rejection, any closed door. They weren't just silencing him. They were teaching the next generation to silence every voice that looked like his. Marcus's chest burned, rage and sorrow colliding. He could walk out. He could swallow the insult, keep his dignity, and never come back. That would be the safer choice. But then he looked back at the girl. Her eyes weren't cruel. They were confused, questioning. Like she was waiting to see if he really was what she'd been told he was. That look shattered him. Because this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about what she would grow up believing. Marcus took a breath so deep it felt like it might break him. And with it, he made his choice, not to protect himself, but to fight for her. He lifted the mic, his voice firm, unshaken. And what he said next silenced the entire room. Marcus steadied his breath. His voice carrying through the room with a weight no one expected. He didn't defend his wealth, his title, or the years of struggle it took to stand there. Instead, he spoke of dignity. He spoke of how words shape the way children see the world. How hatred is not born, but taught. The room fell silent, but this time it wasn't out of scorn. It was the silence of people forced to confront themselves. Parents shifted uncomfortably, some lowering their eyes. And the little girl. She didn't look away. Her gaze softened, as if hearing for the first time that respect was something earned through humanity, not denied because of skin. When Marcus finished, he didn't feel triumphant. He felt heavy, knowing his speech might not change every mind in that room. But he also knew one thing. The girl would never forget what happened. She had been given two voices that day. One that told her to hate, and one that showed her truth. Which voice she chose to carry forward could shape far more than just her own life. Walking back to his car, Marcus realized the fight wasn't just about him. It was about every young child who deserved to grow up free from the poison of prejudice. His success had given him a stage, but moments like this proved that the real measure of a man wasn't what he owned. It was the courage to stand when silence was easier. And so the question remains for us. When hate speaks, will we let it echo, or will we speak louder with love and truth? If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment with your thoughts, because your voice matters more than silence. And if you believe every child deserves to grow up without hate being planted in their heart, hit the like button so this message reaches further. The question is simple. When we see injustice, will we turn away, or will we stand and speak? The choice is ours.